We're back with the part 3, if I remember this correctly. There's too many videos now. We're back with the part 3 of our kind of, World Brewers Championship Boston experience, where we're just walking through some of the things that we believe are really important, at least for us, sharing what we have done, and if there's something in there that can help you, we're happy with that. So green coffee. Really interesting question, really interesting process. I think most of you, if you've seen my presentation, then you know what kind of coffee I work with. A natural anaerobic fermented geisha varietal from a farm called Datota in Costa Rica. The farm is very important here. Maybe most importantly is Esteban, the producer of the coffee. So Esteban works for a larger mill that he basically sources and scouts really good green coffee, and then he takes it and he processes that. So it's not processed by the farmer. And he is a person that kind of made, or a big part of making anaerobic fermentations famous in Costa Rica, or what other people refer to cinnamon coffees. Now, I tried that coffee the first time last year from Matthew, competing in the World Barista. And I mean, I remember a friend of mine gave me the espresso, and I tried it, and I was so convinced that was his signature beverage, because I thought it mixed a bunch of stuff in it, because it was the most flavor intense and one of the most complex coffees I've ever had. And I knew right then and there that that was the coffee I wanted to compete with. Well, that's not true, because it wasn't the coffee I ended up competing with. I wanted to compete with something more complex, because we spent some time with that coffee after Amsterdam and brewed it in a few different ways. And I mean, it does taste like cinnamon quite a lot. However, it only tasted like cinnamon. So we needed more complexity in the coffee, a higher level of complexity in the coffee. So I was in contact with Esteban for almost 6 months, talking about how can we make this happen. And then I went and visited them just a few weeks ago in Costa Rica as well to pick the coffee, basically for my national. And we always talked about a geisha varietal. He hadn't done it before with the geisha varietal, and I thought the process needed a stronger varietal to showcase a wider range of complexity in the coffee. So, as you guys know, I'm not a fan of only being able to taste processing in the coffee. I want to taste a lot more different things. I want to be able to taste really clean, good stuff. And with that in mind, I kind of changed my focus, and we were looking at this varietal. And the thing is, when the first time I cupped it, it created these really beautiful characters that we weren't aware of before into this processing. So we had a lot more complexity to it. So that's how I actually found the coffee and which coffee I used. But it's also kind of interesting to reflect on the fact on what kind of coffee should you have, what is a good coffee, what is a bad coffee. It should be stated that 3 of the people in the final in Boston had the same coffee, which is the kind of highest tier of 90 plus geisha coffee. Coffee that I have tried many times and chose not to use. Does it mean it's not an amazing coffee? No, it is a pretty extraordinary coffee in the sense that it will taste extremely different from most of the coffees you will ever taste. But the issue for me there is that it just wasn't a representation of what we're looking for at April. We're looking for clean stuff with clean flavor integrity, where you can taste the work of the farmer more so than the work of the processing. And I think we found that in this coffee. I mean, in general, what we can see backstage, we see a bunch of natural processed coffees. I should say, and this is not necessarily a critique. You can also be just a taste perception, but I've actually never been in a situation where I tasted so many alcoholic, kind of rum-like fermented coffees from all over the place, different farms and different origins. But it seems like that was really the focus this year, where a lot of people went for these really, really alcoholic fermented coffees, which I'm definitely not a fan of. I think one of the most interesting parts of this year's competition was a wash process Catuai from Figueta Quesi in Bolivia that placed number 6. And he scored extremely high on his second highest in the open service. in the first round with a wash process Catuai, which that still amazes me. And I mean, if there's anything I've understood from this competition is that people, do you have to have a funky processed geisha to win this? No, definitely not. Is it time to maybe even bring a wash coffee? Yeah, it could be. I mean, that's pretty interesting because I think I see the score sheet from a different perspective. Again, calibration is different from different years and with different judges. So it also depends on who you have and what they're looking for. The rumor this year backstage, at least starting in Boston, was that they're looking for cleaner coffees. Not sure where that rumor came from, but that's kind of what people said. So again, my process of choosing green coffee, I mean, I had this coffee in mind for a very long time. With that, I worked with some other coffees as well up until about 1 week from competition. I first worked with 4 different coffees, took it down to 3 different coffees. And the last week before Boston, I brought 1 coffee. So I'm always working with multiple coffees until very, very close to the competition, mainly because I want to try what's out there. I want to see what other people might use. Not that reflects my decision, but I need to understand what kind of coffees can I access and how can I make coffee taste. And I tried some really, really famous coffees from some of the most famous farms and processors and farmers and famous coffee people. We're not mentioning any names, but long story short, they did not live up to the quality that I already had, mainly because they weren't clean, and I'm looking for clean coffees. So that decision was made basically a week before, and at that time I had 3 different presentations to walk up with, all the same kind of structure, slightly different brewing. But still 3 different presentations. And I chose kind of let that go and took the Costa Rican coffee with me up to kind of compete with, which I'm very happy I did that now afterwards, right? But I think it's always important to, competing is about taking the best tasting coffee. It doesn't matter if it's a geisha, non-geisha, anaerobic, non-anaerobic, carbonic, washed, honey, whatever the fuck you call it, because it's about what's tasting the best at the moment. And it's very clear in the competition now that there was a lot of really fancy, very expensive coffees that were all geishas and funky process, and it tasted really bad. So I mean, would they have done better with a wash processed coffee? Yeah, most likely. So I mean, people that say that this is a geisha show, even though there were basically 5 geishas in the final, it's not the case. It's about looking for the best tasting coffee, right? And I personally believe you can find that in other varietals as well. I think you need to work hard, and I think you need to put pressure on the producers to come up with it. But I think there's a lot of room for it, right? I think where the points are, it really comes down to something else, which we're going to go into later in these kind of videos as well. But yeah, just to kind of sum it down, and another thing which I haven't mentioned though, which I think is really important, it's a big part of your scores is going to be your taste description. And your taste description is, ×2, plus it will reflect on your customer service. So if your taste description is really off, you're going to get a lower customer service. And if your taste description is very, very high, you're going to get higher customer service. They're actually linked together, those two. And that's the only 2 they kind of are. So we needed a coffee that was extremely clear in its taste notes, extremely clear and consistent. And we were looking for that, and we were looking for a coffee that was also changing in character. So up front, this coffee had a much kind of sweeter, richer brown sugar, ripe mango, vanilla, cinnamon character. And as it cooled, it went down to like melon, apples, hint of jasmine, so a much lighter coffee. So you had a complex flavor structure change in the coffee. You had an acidity change from malic to tartaric. Flavor intensity is extremely important. They need to find what you're saying. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter, at least not in the World Championship. I believe in international, you can win just by having the tastiest cup of coffee in terms of what the judges are scoring. In the world, you need taste description, you need customer service to be super high. So it's not enough to just have a really tasty coffee. You also need to be able to describe that more or less perfectly. And I think that's a very important part. So, I mean, Choose the best tasting coffee. I know for a fact my coffee was by far not the most expensive coffee in this competition. Not saying it was a cheap coffee, but it also wasn't a very expensive coffee. So focus on flavor intensity, flavor clarity, flavor complexity. In the best of worlds, have a coffee that changed a lot in structure from hot to cold, but keeping the balance in the coffee. Basically, you know, the score sheet is pretty simple. They have a few attributes that are time to acidity, body, and balance. That's why you need to score high. So if you have a coffee that is way better at those three things, and then a flavor is maybe lacking a bit, or the aroma is maybe lacking a bit, that's fine, because a higher point in either of those times two categories is just going to generate a lot more for you. So focus on that as a concept and a structure, and then you're going to be able to actually score a lot higher. So that was that about green coffee. We're going to continue, do a few more of those. It's going to be a long day. Thank you guys for watching.